Thank you for joining us and jumping in here on reports and permits, both of what we've got and what's coming down the pike. And as you'll hear me talk about as we go through, always asking for more volunteers who can do the systems, play with it, and tell us what you'd like or what you'd like changed. So we'll be talking about that more and more. You do have down at the bottom of your screen, you can mute your microphone if you're using the computer mic, or you might have to do that on your telephone if you didn't want to have your voice pop through, but it's always there. The other one is you can do in the chat in the upper right. Anytime there's a question or something, we'll be monitoring that, so you don't have to worry about trying to get in and get through or get to the unmute. Give us a chat if you have some question, no matter what, no matter when, and we'll get to it then, or we'll circle back to that. So the only other thing I would say is during this, or right as you get started, go up into the chat and let us know what county you're from, and if on the reports or permits, are you using permits, and then on reports, are you have a specific area you do, or are you just doing all reports in general? So just to let us know and let our people know that are on the call. On the call too, and they'll bounce in at different times, we have a variety of the IRIS staff. Ken Smith, who is our database administrator and does GIS items for us. Ray Dennison, he is a programmer and software developer for us, and he is actually focusing a lot on reports and permits now, so you'll get to know his name as you start rolling into 10 and things we need changed. Got Casper Leonard, he is our IT director for IRIS and the County Road Program, and Tom Emery, he is another software developer programmer. He's making sure the integration between your programs actually flows through to 10 and does all those things. So they're on there. They may jump in occasionally, but otherwise they are always here to help you out and help all of us. So what I'd like to do is share my screen again. And that would be, if I could get it, oh, that's support, don't need support. Well, I do, but it's a whole separate issue. Okay, so what we want to look at today, and just a quick review, the reports in the current version, talk about some of the issues that are hanging people up or things that look strange when people are coming up with it, look for alternate reports or views, talk a little bit about custom reports. I know some of you are really into the custom reports, which is great. Some of you haven't touched it, and so I want to just urge you to play around with it and do that. And we'll look at permits, how they currently are in the system, and then that will also transition us over to version 10 and looking at the new access into IRIS, security issues, how we set that up, reports that are in there now. And again, you'll get a sales pitch from me about if you want to start trying those out. That's great, because then you can tell us what we would like to get changed and things before we have to roll it out, so we can maybe make corrections before it goes out there. And also look at permits, because that's actually out there too as beta, and you can actually start doing your permits that way. So that's where we're headed. Again, if you have any questions or anything of that nature, please do put them in the chat, and all of us in IRIS will hopefully be monitoring that and shake the tree if someone needs to bring a question up. So let's get started on this. So currently, we are recreating all the reports that are in the standard reports, and they're going to be available in 10. In fact, actually, about 90+% of that are actually now in IRIS 10, and we have a couple of counties trying that out, but we're always looking for more to try that out and get your feedback on those. So those are available. We're bringing them over, and I want to assure you too, is the standard forms that you're looking at now, you're going to see very similar in the new version. So we're not changing things over wholeheartedly that it's going to make it so it's difficult to see the same information. It is the same information in much of the same forms, and then as we get your feedback, we can maybe change those and do some of those as well. Some of the things, and again, I'm just doing a top level here because everyone seems to be doing a lot in the current canned reports under your little reports icon, and just finding the module you want and the types of reports that are there. The main issues that people are calling me or emailing about is really trying to determine, what are you trying to get? Are you looking at a detailed report or a summary report? And again, if the roadmaster or somebody else in the office is looking for actual specifics, maybe you need to find that detailed report that breaks it down by the activity, by the material, by everything that way. Or if you just need top line dollars, that's a summary report. So think about that as you're looking for different things and looking for the report that's going to give you the detail you want. Another issue that's come up that people have some queries about, and it's that how the system organizes things. A lot of times in the displays of names or what you're calling different things, it starts with the numerics and then we'll go to letters. So sometimes when you're adding letters to the end of a numeric, it doesn't appear, you don't see it in the top line. So for instance, I use just the number 3, but like 0003, and you're expecting to see something else, but it's not there. Well, it may be further down the list in the 3s because just a 3A is there. And then even like 13B, even though it's still got the 3 in it, it does go numerically lower on the list and with that letter. So you need to consider that if you're adding letters to project names or other names or items, but also look a little more down the list and to make sure that the thing that you've added is actually there and you don't have the mistake that you're fearing that it isn't there. It hopefully is. The other item for you that you might want to look at and think about is look for a similar report. And this is actually the link to the page. Let's see if it goes. One of these. So OregonCounties.org. Do that. See how fast it can do this, if it even does it at all. Sometimes we get the lag in the internet, and I always associate it with the gamers get woken up and now they start gaming. So on the main page here, under roads, under county road program and IRIS, and that link was in theory going directly to that, but you can always save that as one of your favorites. Down here under reports, we list all the modules. We can go from there, and then once it brings it up, it'll give you all the reports that we have images for, and you can actually see what that report might look like. So then you can say, it's getting me more information what I want, or that's what I want, or what I'm looking at. Gives you the number if you're looking on the screen for numbers, or if you're looking at the name of it, should give you that. So you always have that ability if you go into the OregonCounties.org, roads, and then Integrated Road Information System under the County Road Program. So there's that one as well. The other thing, that we would talk about, and lots of times too, as you're making reports that are custom reports, or even when you're trying to pull off a major, a normal report, red is not your friend. You'll see red in the text coloring, or it's shaded out or something. It really boils down, that sometimes is boiling down to this security authorization issue. So your administrator or someone needs to give you authorization for that. So if this person on the security screen was looking for that and they look under reports, and suddenly all of these aren't checked, they're not a little checkbox on it, so they don't have authorization, so they're not actually able to view that report, print it out, or even make a custom report. So sometimes if you're doing that and you can't get the information you want, look at that as well. Is it an issue of security? We are creating those existing custom reports that are there now into version 10. So they're going to pull over, and Cass, we're going to talk about that, how we identify them with a little icon and things very shortly. But what I would do as a sales pitch, review your list. Do you need all of those? We want to focus on the ones you really use. And if you need them all, we'll pull all of them over. We'll do all of them. And that's under your custom report wizard, and the little plus symbol that's in the upper right, and it's under report quick load. That will list all of those. So start going through some of those, and if you have ones that you've never used, but they've been there from 3 other previous people, maybe we don't have to pull them over. But if you want them, we'll pull them over. Again, some people are really utilizing the custom report wizard. We love that. What I want to urge you is play around with it. It's not going to break anything. It's just a matter of it's just giving you a view of the data that's in IRIS. So don't be afraid of playing with it when you get a chance. I think of it, I'm not as much of a programmer as the other guys are, and they have a little easier way of understanding this. But for me, as a non-programmer user, what I think about when I'm looking at customer reports is think about it as the 30,000 foot level first. Think about, okay, what module is that data stored in? So where is it? So if I wanted a customer report that's dealing with costs of a road and some activities, oh, that's all in cost accounting. Okay, then I can drill down from there into a sub-module, which would be something like, okay, so it's cost accounting, but oh, it's been posted to that, so it's in transactions. Then select the items you want from the display, and then you can sort, adjust, make columns smaller, bigger, whatever you need to do. So that's how I always went about it. So my custom reports, I'm going to that little wizard. Help me, Mr. Wizard. So again, we talked about where's the main module. All the main modules are here, so you pick out what you want. And then you've got all these sub-modules in there, the screens, the activities, whatever. So again, in our example, we were talking about what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for something that was in transaction. Now you see all the other choices I have. So if I was doing something, I want an activity, talks about the project, talks about costs and under time things, and there's probably already a report out there like that. But let's just, for kicks and grins, we'll just put one together real quick. So now I'm in activity. I like to put the name description. So I have a numeric and then the description of it. And then as I go down, you start just clicking on things you want to pull it over, and it will list it out for you. So now I'm in project. I'm going to do the opposite. We're going to description name. So now it starts with the wording and then the numeric. Okay, so I've got that. So I can keep going down. So somewhere I need to start thinking about, oh, I probably need task dates or something. So I'm going to look for task dates. See, oh, there's one right there, task date. So I can pull that over, just leaves it out there. And so, oh, total resource cost, I'll want that one as well, total resource cost. There you go. So just to get us started, we've got this. Now, you will have to name it something just to get it to upload for you. And then you can press the little wizard and it'll go. Now, before I do that, though, I'm looking down here and it says, I've got 52,213 records. I could do that. It may take a while for it to load, but oh, I'm looking at everything in the world. So I can use my filter, and then the drop down brings up those column names that you did. So I want, okay, let's do task date. Let's do is greater than or equal to, and let's just do 060120. So now as we filter that, I'm down to 321 records. That's a little better. I can deal with that. So let's just roll that out. So once I push on that wizard, it comes up and gives me that information I want, which is fine. However, it's still a little hard to read and figure out, and it's not really put together well. So I can do some other tweaking on that if I want. There is both. Let's say, let's organize it so all the activities of the same name are first grouped together. So I grab that column and just put it up in the gray area. And I'm also, since we're dealing with dollars and money and all that, I'm going to want to know what the total is of things. So I'm going to use that one that had a money line on it, click on that little E symbol. It's actually a financial symbol, but I can't think of the name right now. And then I'm going to say, let me sum up these items. Okay. So now I'm going to save it, because now by saving it, it'll also appear in my reports dropdown. Hey, look, it's right there. So next time, if I exit out of this, I can still get back here on that. So in theory, I've saved all that. So now we can run it again. And didn't change the total lines, but now it's grouped things together with cost pricing. So it may make it easier for you. Last thing I'll do on that, for those of you, is also you have the blue little box, edit column captions, right next to your filter. You can take the columns, change the names, truncate the names. So we'll change this to a new name. You can hide columns if you want, and then you just save all that. Then the next time we run it again, you'll notice that what you said now becomes the column name, a new name. So instead of, for this, it was an activity name, it's come up the new name. So you can tweak all those however you want. You save them and you can always come back, pull them out of your quick report list once you're done. Any questions? Okay. And again, if I miss something, Casper and Ken will yell at me. If I'm missing something that comes up in that. I'm going to shift over and talk a little bit about permits. So let that go, but some people are using, well, a few counties are using permits, and we urge you all, if you want to start using permits. How are you tracking both the overweight ODOT permits for trucks and things that are on your roads, access type permits, gates and right-of-ways? Who is your utility that's in the right-of-way that's going to install a new gas line or something of that way? You can store all this and do it. There are some limitations with the current version 9, but it can be done. So I'm going to show you that. However, Casper's going to go more into depth about more flexibility with version 10, and it's actually available there. So if you wanted to start doing that, so you can actually enter it once on the system and print out reports and print out permits for people and do that. So you have electronic as well as scanned information if you want to do that. So that's where we're headed. And again, that's my sales pitch: storage in one location. You can upload images and documents. You can eliminate duplication of handwritten permits and filing and tracking of that paperwork. So there's always additional ways to get that information. So let's see. And I'm going here, I'm going to then reshare my screen. And so under IRIS services, we have all of the permits there, the different kinds. Just like the old commercial, parts is parts. The new version, permits are permits. So you're not going to have to separate your ODOTs. They'll just have an ODOT permit as a type of permit. Your other permits will be in there, utility permits, everything of that nature. So you'll have all of those available for you in 10. For now, we've just got the different kinds. For this, just again, so you can see all the information that somebody has filled out about that item and that permit, and Polk has been kind enough to let us look at their permits. And then once they've entered all of that, it does print out a permit or puts it up first on the screen, and you can email it, you can print it, you can do whatever with your customer, what kind of permit it was, get some signatures if you need to, additional information for that county on general requirements, things of that nature. So this is currently there, and if you are interested in that, we can talk to you more about utilizing your permits and doing things, putting everything in one location. Any access type of permits, any right-of-way type permits, all of that is available for you. I think there's no additional other questions. If not, then I will turn it over to Casper, who's going to switch us over to version 10, show you some of the differences. And again, don't fear it. It's not like a major shift for you, but it's going to give you the opportunity to still utilize reports and permits, which actually are a lot easier now in permits with the new designer. So you can jump into permits. And we are always looking for more people who want to beta use things, because that will give us more opportunity for you to tell us what you like, what you dislike, and change what we need to do. So I'll turn it over to Casper and let him go.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, so let me take over the screen sharing, and we will start with the basics of the interface differences. Now, you just have to bear with me a little bit, because GoToMeeting is definitely not my favorite for sharing screens, but you should have the majority of the presentation on the screen. Now, the first thing I want to talk about before we dive into just the differences in the interfaces of the reports and the permit system is some of the expectations and requirements in order to move to 10 in general. So IRIS 10 will be entirely web-based and also be changing the user system to reflect that more appropriately. In IRIS-9, naming conventions for the users throughout the system are typically more Active Directory style naming, and they may or may not have an email attached to them depending if you use notifications or if you use any other systems that might use the email for sending reports. Now in 10, an email is going to be used to designate your primary username, and it will be required in order to allow users to manage their own passwords and to properly communicate from the system. Now, that transition will happen piecemeal. We need to basically designate an administrative user on your end who will be in charge of ensuring all of the other users are actually able to access what they need and that their emails are valid and everything along those lines, getting them configured initially. So county by county, as you either come in to test out the systems or join the beta program for a different module, you will be incorporated into the new user system, and Greg will walk you through getting the initial users configured, ensuring that you have everything that's required there, and ensuring that security and things like that are configured at least to a basic enough level that you are able to further configure it as needed. Now, currently, the way we have the system set up, every night, IRIS-9 data is moved into IRIS-10 through a migration process that allows us to test our conversion routines. That way we know if anything changes, if we have any problems. But also for those of you who are interested in testing in the beta or just testing out the features at a high level without having to worry about corrupting data, that data that is moved into the 9 databases and structures is free to be tested and is replaced every night, so you don't have to worry about any of the changes being persisted. If you choose to go into the beta program and actually use a program exclusively, say you moved your permitting module entirely to 10 and that's where you're collecting new and current data, then you will have to stop having these nightly migrations because we won't want to overwrite that data. And when that occurs, you'll have to work directly with Ken and Greg to make sure that that is set up and that we are preserving your data and that everyone understands where the primary source of data will be. The entire routine is actually pretty seamless. It seems a lot more daunting than it actually is, but we just want to make sure it's very clear how we are flowing the data from one to the other so that people can better lay out their work processes if they look to use these new systems. Now, the report system in particular is brand new from the ground up. Everything in IRIS-10 has been written from scratch in a new language with new component hardware and source components. But in particular, reports has gone through a major overhaul. We wanted to definitely optimize the interface and make it easier for people to find reports. There's been a lot of issues historically with some reports being in one category but seeming like they should be in another. For instance, they may fall into a cost accounting module report, but actually be AR related or weed spraying related or the like. The new system is focused around being searchable and optimizing the location of these reports. Already at this stage, we have, as Greg said, probably well over 90% of the reports that will be in 10 moved to 10. We did exclude some reports that hadn't been run in the last 5+ years. Reports that seem to have been superseded by better quality reports. And we've also corrected a lot of the reports in the system for either formatting issues that have persisted over the years or things that we found in the data that could potentially allow filter configurations or something of the like that would cause the report to not present exactly as you expected. So we've been spending time manually correcting all of these issues as we release them. And primarily, as Greg stated, that's what Ray has been working on our team. And so if you find any issues, you'll probably be working with him to get those resolved and get the designers sorted out. Now, we are also going to be doing all the rendering differently. Currently in IRIS-9, the rendering of the report occurs in the session connection to our server. So that little window that pops up after you go past the client is a terminal services window. And that is because the application is running on our server side and you are actually then viewing it through that window and your computer is actually one step removed there. Now, when we move to the new version, this will be running in a browser, which means the actual rendering and everything about the reports will be occurring on your computer locally. So issues that we currently have with printing, if you have a printer that doesn't cooperate with Windows shared print services or with the virtualized printers, that will be a non-issue. So long as other applications can print, you should be able to print no problem. And because it's happening locally, there shouldn't be any delay in the processing of the printing request. Now, this entirely new web interface has required the reports to be changed slightly in some ways. For instance, there may be older fonts that were used in the reports that we couldn't use anymore. We had to find a comparable font and make slight adjustments to some of the rendering spacing alignments on things. In this example below, I just grabbed an example of an activity transaction cost report. And on the left, we have the IRIS-9 report run with the exact same data as the IRIS-10 report. And you can see side by side that they're almost exactly the same. There's a few changes that we had made just because we thought either they would be quality of life changes or that they might make the formatting and printing a little easier. Now, the naming and numbering from IRIS-9 has been preserved. So as many of you are familiar with, there is a series of letters and then numbers that denote which report you had printed so that you can look it up later. Now, this system is carried forward and we will continue to name and number reports in a similar fashion. However, we are less focused on ensuring that they are locked into one specific module category, and instead will be named more related to the data that they contain. Now, with the majority of the rendering happening on your computer's end rather than on our server, we've also separated the backend data for these reports so that the majority of the structuring and any changes in the query that happen to present to the report are happening now on the server side instead of being run through any sort of application code in the report itself. This gives us the ability to take a request for a bug change or a change to a formula calculation and have it done on the database side, and then serve that up in a quick hotfix without having to release an entirely new code revision or application publish. And this means you'll be able to get some changes and corrections much quicker than you typically could in IRIS-9. Now, this is an example of the main landing screen for the new report system. Basically, the design objective was to simplify finding reports and identifying what they are before you actually have to go and run them. So if you glance up here at the top left of the picture, there's a search report box, and then below it immediately is your list of reports. There's no longer categorical separations based on what module they most apply to. Instead, we have an active description that we can fill out for each report, as well as a thumbnail of that report having been run with some example data. Down below, you still have a region for creating filters for these reports when you run them. And to simplify the description of this a little bit, I will go ahead and jump over to the reports portal here. So this is what the entry page for the new reports system looks like. This is the development version. We have them isolated between the development and the release version so that we can be actively testing features before they're released out to the systems that you will be using and interacting with daily, just to ensure that nothing bleeds through into the working world that might not want to be there. Now, as you can see, we have a basic login. It uses your email as your primary identifier, and you must have a reasonably complex password. The complexity requirements can be changed based on what the administrator wants. Currently, we only have a couple options in there, but we may add several layers of complexity depending on what your county specifically would like to see for your users. Once you log into the system, the application will take you to a specific landing page for the module you're working with. In this case, I'm going ahead to pop into reports, and the reports system, well, the fading animations don't look very good coming across the stream platform, but basically it starts you out with a list of your reports, and that's it. So you can pick your report from here if that's what you're looking to do. Or if you don't know what you're looking for and just have a report number, you can just say, I'm looking for CAS 1062, and that will filter your list down to the specific report you need. If you pick your list or item here, whichever report you choose to pick in the list, you will then be taken to all the settings for that report. So to show you another example, I'll clear my search so that the entire list is here again. And you can see in the second column in the box, we have the numbers that you're familiar with from IRIS-9. The name on the left is very, very close to IRIS-9. However, there were some names and descriptions in IRIS-9 that were a little misleading, and so we attempted to clarify a few of those to ensure people could still find the content they were looking for. On the farthest left extreme, you can see the stars. These star icons denote your ability to favorite reports. So rather than having to have them in subsection categories where you're constantly defining static groupings, you simply come in a report you're running frequently, you click the star icon next to it, it will move that icon or that report to the top and color the icon in, saying that that is now a favorited report, and favorited reports are always sorted to the top for convenience. You may also notice here that some of these do not have numbers in the column here. They actually have little icons of people. These icons denote a user-generated or user-configured field or application component in the system. In this case, these denote custom reports. So in the new system, we have combined and centralized all the reports, custom reports and canned reports, into this main list so that you can search on them as needed. Whether it was a canned report or a custom report, you'll be able to find it here, and you'll know immediately which one it is. In the final application, you'll also edit your custom reports from here by simply selecting the existing one and hitting edit. That'll bring up the designer to make changes that you may need to make. Or you can simply hit a button to create a brand new one here, and it'll immediately go into the list once you save it. Now, the rest of the system functions basically as you would expect. Once you picked a report that you want to look at, you get given the description, the thumbnail, and the filtering criteria. The filtering criteria work basically the same as whatever you're familiar with in IRIS-9. You can pick the fields that are allowed to be filtered within that report. You can pick the operator you're applying to it, whether that's equals, greater than, less than, not equals, between, whatever you may be doing. And that will build you a presentable report. Hopefully, you'll have a limited number of records to work with that's feasibly printable. And for this, I'll just grab this simple basic transaction cost report. There should be some dummy data in the database I'm currently connected to. But realistically, the easiest one would be if I just do an activity listing report. Let's grab the activity listing report. I know this one will have data in this database without me having to hunt for it. So when you click the finish button, it will present and render your report. Now this report is rendered inside of a viewer that we have control of, and we will be adding additional tool items to it as needed. One of those items will be the ability to quick email the report and the like. It may be also getting a faster way to save to PDF. Currently, you can print to PDF through your print settings. It will launch a standard print preview window that you're familiar with, and because this is rendered to your computer, any printers, whether they are connected to the local computer or the network that you have on that machine, are available. And as you can see, going into the print settings is almost immediate. So we no longer have that delay of going between the server side rendering and then attempting to connect and facilitate a render using the print drivers on the local machine. So it should be a much faster process when you're working through it. There is some more detailed features inside of the report system, but to keep it simple for today's presentation, I'll leave that for Greg to train on. Additionally, when we get into this more extensively, we will be, let's see Jay's comment. I thought he might like the speed increases. As we move forward with this and start doing some more specialized training, we will be able to get into some of the more advanced features of how to set up security on reports and how we're going to be managing security here versus in IRIS 9. In IRIS 9, the security was a little convoluted as we layered on the system security to report security to custom report security. And so we'll be hopefully streamlining that process. Now, moving toward permits, permits actually utilizes a lot of the same systems as the report system for rendering and printing the permit once it's entered. So for those of you not familiar with the permit system at all, essentially it allows you to enter any of the permit information that you may need. If you have existing permit forms that can't be represented in IRIS, you can scan them and attach them to these records so that you're keeping them digitally for historical reference. If you are going to print out of IRIS, this system can also collect the information and print it to essentially formatted reports that are your permit templates and then be given directly to your customer. So when we started this whole process, we recreated basically all of the flexibility that's currently in the permit system and then added as much as possible to facilitate more counties being able to use it with less overhead of the transition. So one of the things we changed was how you attached a printable format to a permit type. And we now have a one-to-one relationship. If you have a new format or template that you need to print for a permit, you can simply associate that to a new type that is in the list, and that will be what denotes what will get printed when you hit view permit or print permit. You also will now, throughout the entire system, but also specifically on permits for this example, have changes to the way user-defined fields are denoted. They will also be getting those little people icons in the corner so that you can tell if you've renamed it something like signed by, you now know whether that was a user-defined field or one of the original fields that's available throughout IRIS. That will be useful when you're wondering why data is or is not available on one of the permit templates. And in other screens, it'll be useful for preserving our sanity when we're trying to figure out where a value came from. Now, because this is the same technology, you can do some of the same advanced things that we do in reports. And in fact, permits actually has a few more features that haven't been in reports for quite a while. One of the examples is the headers here. I used Polk County because they had some nice reports already in the system. On the left at the bottom, we have a standard ODOT permit that just kind of spews the information out in a very simple format. On the right, we have the top of one of Polk County's newer permits that has their county icon, all the header information, and at the bottoms, they actually take the signature and apply it there. And I believe you may have seen that in the example that Greg was showing. Now, you get all the same benefits of speed improvements and optimizations, as well as gaining some customization here, whereas canned reports are used by everybody, and they can't be customized too extensively without making some sort of branch for your specific county need. Here, we are building these permits in such a way that if you are someone who can use a generic printable template, we will give you a good starting point for the basic permit. But if you need a very custom permit or you need to replicate existing permits, that capability is in the system. It's just a matter of working with our staff to ensure that we can create a facsimile that meets the standard for wherever you're printing it from. Now, the general interface looks like this. We are combining all permits throughout the system into this one single screen. So as you can see in this lower image, there are 3 tabs at the top: a standard permit, a utility permit, and an ODOT permit. Historically, those have been scattered out in separate sections, even some of them in different modules. And we're attempting to bring everything back to a single location to make it easier to manage and make permits essentially its own module. That means someone who works with permits but doesn't work with the rest of IRIS doesn't have to be familiar with IRIS. They can come directly to the permits module to make changes that they may need and not have to learn anything extended beyond that. So let's pop over here and go to the permits portal. Now, hopefully I haven't left this sitting for too long to where it's fallen asleep on me, but this is the live interface right now for the whole system. And I will have to jump over and use Polk as an example because my test data set is not nearly as complete as their data. But as you can see, it's a very simple interface. At the top, you have your search function as expected. All of our screens will continue to carry forward with the search option. That's a much faster way than most filters for finding something, unless you have a very detailed filtering you need to do to narrow down to a multiple set of items instead of a single item. You have your icons, for instance, new permit, editing a permit, deleting permits, and viewing permits. Now, we are making some experimental changes in the early versions of IRIS 10 and playing with whether editing in a grid is easier for certain aspects of the program or whether a pop-up form is easier to edit and understand, as well as having some controls on data integrity that way, focusing on editing a single item versus multiple items. So in this case, this system still works with line edits. We would be editing the control directly in the grid. On some of the other features you will see moving forward, you may start to see some of these using pop-ups similar to what is in service request. We will be gaining feedback from various users, and we'll probably have the two systems enabled side by side as we're doing beta testing. So if that's something you might be interested in giving feedback on, you may want to participate in either some of the beta program or some of these other calls where we start showing some actual editing controls. Now, within this permit system specifically, we have several things at play that are part of the core IRIS system. We have the main grid controls, which you've come to expect in IRIS 9. We also have representations of the comments and documents system. So the comments and documents system are core to the entire IRIS program and not limited to one specific module. These essentially allow you to attach either a comment or note, as it's sometimes called in 9, to a specific data record or line item, and you can attach documents to it. When you upload a document, historically it was uploaded to our server and it was compressed and it was actually managed through the file system with Active Directory. In IRIS 10, these documents will now be stored inside the database. So when you are looking to do things like receive a nightly backup for other uses on your county end or something, it may be possible for us to pair off and send you some of your documents as well now, rather than just having a giant zip file available for you in an FTP folder. With the multiple tab options here, we also have the ability to keep the training simple on this as well. Each of these tabs is going to be very similar in configuration, layout, and what you're expecting to see in your columns. We have it currently paginated down to 100 items per page, but this can be extended and changed as needed. Realistically, the biggest key here is we don't want a screen like permits where you're managing individual permits, typically one by one, to be set up in a way that facilitates errors that could involve the editing or manipulation of multiple records when that's not the intent. Further on these items, any of these items that you see in the grid here that has its type attached to it. So specifically, I know the standard permit has a pretty nice looking designer for Polk in particular. When you pick your item, if you are a county who does print and mail these directly from the system, you will be given a printable report window that looks very much the same as the report system, filled in with the data from the permit you were just working with. Now, in this particular example, this is a somewhat standard report that Polk is now using for these specific types of permits. And as you can see, it has some basic language. It pulls in some of the data into the center of the report, the contact person you're working with outside of the county, as well as the county logo, and it can pull in the signature onto the reports if you have that item filled in. Now, one of the items I wanted to touch on with all of this is that this data that currently exists in 9 and that can be used in 10, anything associated with it, we're attempting to migrate automatically. And that includes documents and comments. So if we jump over here to the presentation again, when we're talking about these documents, they were historically file system objects stored up here and compressed and then reopened when you wanted to view one on demand. That is still going to be true as far as the viewability and your utilization to either download it again or view it right where it's at. But they will be stored in the database, which makes it a lot easier for the backup and management of the system. However, it is meaning that we have to migrate them all from file system objects into the database initially. So we will be doing all of that automatically. That's not something that will require involvement from the county side unless you have missing documents. There are some examples of counties who had special configurations with where they were storing documents that we may need to work with you on getting that integrated into the new application in some way. But that'll be a case-by-case basis. For the most part, it should be almost completely seamless. The comment system will be standardized at naming now. When we move forward with this, the interface is going to be cleaned up and simplified as much as possible. It was a little convoluted when you would open that pop-up and then have to hit the plus sign to work with the grid. It confused some people who didn't use IRIS extensively, especially if they only came in to work with permits or the like. So the new system will be a little bit more intuitive about which buttons you need to click to be working with the data directly. And when we move forward with this application and get this out into your hands, we need a lot of testing and feedback. Overall, the system is progressing along well enough to be tested, but ultimately we don't know what will facilitate your usage of the system more and which of these interface changes will be beneficial in the long run. If you can get into one of these programs or participate with Greg in simply walking through and looking at the system, that would be helpful in getting some feedback as far as how we're laying out editing controls, how our toolbars are shaping up, and also getting some experiments out there to find out how well these things run in your browsers in the field. And the idea behind this is that we're targeting the most broadly applied browser technology possible, but there will be some limitations in this, and it would be nice to know during the testing phases if we're running into any problems with county-specific security settings or domain restrictions. So if possible, if you think your county might be one of the more restrictive counties out there, please feel free to reach out to us so that we can work through any firewall or localized issues that there may be. And I think with that, I will go ahead and hand it back to Greg because I've already been running for a while.
Thank you very much. I think we're good. What questions do people have that we can hopefully answer? Put those in your chat. And again, don't worry that you think of something 10 minutes after the call's ended. Jot it to us, let us know, and we'll be able to reply to those, whatever you happen to have. While we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, let's see if I can get this. And remember that the next webinar for us will be down on 5, will be August 20th. And we're going to look at service requests on that one. So service requests, and we'll go from there.
And in these webinars, we're basically going through high-level features. If we're glossing over something you might want to see more in depth, just work with Greg and I, and we can get you set up with a more specific training focused on a particular topic. So service requests, permits, some of these things can be actually pretty deep topics that may be more workflow related than actual technology related.
Well, I don't see any questions. So again, don't worry if it comes up right after the call's off. Still shoot us that. If you want to start playing with some of this, please let us know. We'll make sure all your security levels get going in there. And then after that, well, again, more questions. We love to have those, and we'll go from there. I appreciate your time and appreciate everyone coming here. Don't forget our next one, and we will go forward from there. Thank you very much.